I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You don't deserve this. If I could just one more day with you, I'd be the happiest man alive. I blinked groggily awake to the gentle sounds of a crackling fire. The itchy texture of worn bedsheets, the weight of a heavy knit blanket. I could recall once or twice having felt these very sensations to the point I considered them familiar and comforting. And yet, nothing could prepare me for the bright yellow eyes peering into mine. What? My knuckles hit him square in the face as Mychael yelped, nose scrunchy as a taller man stumbled backwards into a stool. He landed on his rear with the grimace of a clumsy toddler on the floor. I sat up in a panic and immediately grimaced, landing back on the bed with a unceremonious flop. It hit me in one fell swoop, how my whole body was aching. Every single one of my limbs felt like they'd gone through the ringer and came out on the other side all crinkled and wrong. I groaned aloud, leaning my head back on the pillow. Mychael shifted back on his feet, rubbing his nose. Lion! His voice was an awkward croak before he cleared his throat. I'm glad you're awake. How are you feeling? Terrible. He visibly flinched. Sorry to hear that. He stepped closer to the bed, leaning over warily in case my hand dramatically whips out again in self-defense. With my hand settled on my lap, he deemed it safe enough to sit beside me. What happened, Mychael? You don't remember? I shook my head, wincing a bit as my head pounded. Not at all. Mychael hesitated. You, tripped and hit your head. I had to carry you home? His words almost slurred together as he fidgeted. My head? I slowly lifted my hand to feel for bumps or bruises, but he hastily snatched my wrist. Don't worry about that. Here, have this. It'll help. Mychael gave me a familiar-looking drink as he quickly pressed a cup into my hands. Sitting up with some effort to take a sip, I couldn't help the small sense of déjà vu. The amount of times I woke up in his bed dazed and disoriented is almost uncomfortable now. At least the drink was helping, just like he promised. My body felt lighter as I finished. Mychael took the cup from me and set it aside before wringing his hands together with a nervousness I haven't seen in a while. So, I'm sorry this happened. I didn't mean for you to get hurt. I sighed and waved aside his worry with an embarrassed grumble. Wouldn't be the first time I tripped, if you could believe it. It's not your fault. He gave a soft chuckle, but it sounded guilty. I suppose you're right. It's just... His face looked like he had a million thoughts running through his head. I promised, didn't I? I said I was gonna look out for you. I said I was gonna keep you safe. Instead, I made you hurt. His voice cracked. I'm so sorry, Lion. The sudden change in demeanor was startling, to say the least. You couldn't have predicted it was going to happen. And I'm fine, see? Oh, Firefly. I guess you're right. His expression carried a lingering doubt, but he quickly masked it with a small smile, his eyes dim. In that case, you'll be staying? The way he said it almost sounded like a decision that's already been made. Or a plea. What do you mean? His eyes darted aside. You agreed to let me find my sanity, remember? Did I say that? Also, my sanity is my cat. Just gonna, put it out there in case y'all are here for the first time. Yeah. So, you'll be staying a while longer, right? He didn't even let me get a word in. In fact, a feeling of uncertainty washed over me, as if we've had this conversation before. Besides, what's the rush? It's already late and you're in no condition to travel anyway. I blinked before glancing out the window. Pitch black darkness greeted me as I realized he was right. Yet another uncanny feeling spread through my chest, shivers crawling down my spine. I don't know why, but something about this whole situation feels wrong. I feel like I'm forgetting something else. Mychael had a nervous look on his face. Maybe you hit your head harder than you thought. His words didn't sound confident. How long was I out? A couple hours, I think. You, really took a hit. It was that bad? My brows creased as I tried to recall today's events. I don't remember tripping. There was a river. I remember you. And then... Your memory must be fuzzy, and for a good reason. After all, it's been a rough few days. My stomach grumbled suddenly, echoing in the quiet room. There was a heavy silence right after. Mychael was polite enough to hide his chuckle under a palm as I flushed. He seemed relieved. Well, lucky for you, I've got dinner on the way. It should be ready soon. You're okay with soup, right? Soup? Yeah, soup sounds alright. My stomach growled once more, the pain of an empty gut making me wince a bit. My host immediately noticed. Oh, maybe we should get you some food sooner than later. Do you feel okay enough to get up? I nodded with a grumble, swinging my legs over the side of the bed before noticing something was on my lap. Wait, what's this? I unbundled the pile of thick fabric, realizing it was an oversized sweater and a pair of baggy sweatpants. Mushroom pattern? That's oddly cute. The material felt worn, but comfortable. A towel laid right next to them. Is this for me? I figured since you'll be staying another night, you'd want some fresh clothes. They might be a few sizes bigger. Or a lot. Sorry. He's gone shy for some reason. On the other hand, I didn't have to take a whiff at myself to know that I probably reek. I nodded again, giving him a small but grateful smile. They're fine, Mychael. Thank you. Yet another thing I had to owe him. I couldn't help feeling like I'm taking advantage of his kindness now. So, you know where the bathroom is. Take your time cleaning up. I'll be in the kitchen if you need anything. I'm really happy you're here. He stood there for a good few seconds, fidgeting with his hands as if he wanted to say more before finally heading to the kitchen. I watched his back retreat before hoisting myself up and heading to the bathroom. Now that I was alone, I had a moment to gather my thoughts. The nagging feeling was back, a prickling feeling across my skin, raising goosebumps, as if to tell me I shouldn't be here. I just couldn't place my finger on what. Well, I was probably just being paranoid. I should be careful. Yeah, does this matter? I will make a save just in case this matters. I should be careful. I just couldn't shake the feeling that Mychael was hiding something. He'd been a gracious host so far, but that didn't make him the most trustworthy either. There's definitely something I'm missing. My mind was wandering, even as I undressed and stepped under the shower. The icy chill of the water did nothing to distract me from my nerves. If anything, it elevated it. I was a shivering mess by the time I was done cleaning myself with whatever soap he had lying around. Once I dried myself, I inspected his clothes inside out to see if there's anything off with them. They smelled like wet grass and burnt wood. Considering his lifestyle, it made sense for his clothes to have that sort of scent stuck to them, I suppose. Putting them on, it just reminded me of how big and tall Mychael was, compared to me at least. I fidgeted and fiddled with the sleeves and waistband until I could somewhat move comfortably. There's no mirror in this bathroom, so I had to assume I looked like a walking potato sack. Better than nothing. Gathering my courage, I shook out my hands and straightened myself up before exiting towards the kitchen. A savory scent filled my nose. Mychael did mention dinner was almost done. As I entered, I saw Mychael by the stove, idly stirring something crimson in a pot and humming quietly to himself. His content smile widened as he saw me, his ears flicking. I tried not to look uneasy as he looked me up and down. Oh, how do they fit? They're all right. Much too big for me. He nodded, turning back to the pot. I can see that. Right. His smile faltered as he picked up on the wariness in my tone. Is everything all right? No, it's not all right. I still can't get over the fact that you're so much taller than me now. Why did Tumblr decide that you had to be tall? I wanted to be a short king with you. His eyes held a sense of worry, his shoulders tensing. I can get you something else to wear if you'd like. There's no need. He paused, hand gripping onto the ladle tightly as he continued to hesitate. Lion. There's another pause before his brows furrowed. I'm not an idiot. You don't trust me, do you? I flinched. Mychael looked hurt as he sighed. So I'm right. His ears flicked by the sides of his head as he turned back towards the stove. Can I just know why? His eyes were sad as he stared at the pot, as if he'd been in this situation before. I thought I did everything right. Truthfully, I didn't expect such a direct confrontation. There's a lump in my throat, as my fists clenched at my sides. It's just... The kettle started whistling, but he was clearly ignoring it. I swallowed down my growing anxiety and decided to be upfront. I just didn't expect to be here again. It felt like the wrong thing to say when Mychael's frown deepened. So you never wanted to be here? I didn't mean it like that. Also, why didn't I have a choice to, just try to divert the conversation? I feel like that should have been a choice right there. Then, how else could you possibly mean it? Another deep sigh slipped out of himself as he reached to lift the kettle off the stove, mumbling to himself. I was hoping it'd be different. What was I thinking? What did you say? Nothing. Mychael, His forlorn expression made my words feel thick on my tongue, forcing me to reluctantly swallow them back down. Any trace of suspicion I had faded and was replaced by a feeling of guilt. I'm sorry. I just thought I'd be home by now. I know. I'm sorry too. He lifted his gaze towards me, eyes full of regret. But is it really so bad, Lion? I know being lost in the woods with a man you don't know can be scary. But I promise, you're safe. The last thing I'd ever want you to be is scared. He trailed off. So just trust me, okay? Can you do that? Please? I swallowed and gave him a nod. My gut still roiled with suspicion, every fiber of my being wary of him to a certain extent. He seemed satisfied, though, eager to move past the tension. Thank you. His mouth quivered at the edges, all four of his eyes squinting with the slightest bit of hope. Please, let it be different for once. Why don't you take a seat, Firefly? I'll be right with you. He was already turning his back towards me to start preparing the tea. I slowly approached him. Hey, let me help this time. Mychael startled, surprised to see me beside him. Sure. Could you get some bowls ready? We're having tomato soup. Oh, do you want some grilled cheese of yours, or would you prefer garlic bread? God, this has got to be the hardest decision in the game. No, grilled cheese, please. Got it. I brushed past him, feeling his tail linger by my ankle as I grabbed the bowls and spoons from the bottom shelf. He started preparing the sides, the smell of toasted bread filling the kitchen and mingling with the soups. I took over preparing the tea. Finally, I ladled the soup from the pot into a larger bowl, just as Mychael finished flipping the last piece. We settled in for a nice hot dinner. Regardless of how I felt about tomato soup, Mychael's turned out rich and creamy with an amazing balance of sour and sweet. Dipping in the bite-sized grilled cheese sandwiches made it taste like pure, savory comfort, crisp and gooey. Even if I never had it as a kid, it still made me feel nostalgic somehow. There is a feeling of stilted awkwardness, but the food helped ease us both into a warmer, light-hearted conversation. I didn't realize how hungry I was until I refilled my bowl, Mychael watching me with his chin propped in his hand. His own bowl sat empty. Apparently, he's already had his fill. Is tomato soup your favorite? His question was innocent, so his eyes were observing me carefully as I shrugged. I think I'd love anything you cook. He stilled, taking a second to process what I said. Thank you. No, thank you. Usually I get takeout or microwave dinners. Nothing beats home-cooked food. What's a microwave? I snickered and tried to explain it the best I can. A metal box that heats up food. That sounds like... What's the word in those fantasy books? Magic? Am I using that word right? I laughed lightly. Sometimes science is just like that. We talked about other kitchen appliances off the top of my head, slowly branching out to other human inventions. He seemed even more interested. I never understood how, Technology worked. I pulled out my phone and let him fiddle with it. So, with the battery dead, there's not much I could show. He was clearly disappointed. It's about as useful as a brick. For now. Otherwise, I'd have a whole network of information in my hands. His eyes lit up. Like a library? And you can access it at any time as long as the battery is alive? And as long as I have an internet connection. Right. Internet. I didn't know you could do that. I just see people staring at them all the time. It seemed boring. He looked at my phone again, a look of wonder on his face. Having a whole library in your hands. Everyone must be really smart then. Not really. We are incredibly dumb. Well, not everyone uses it like a library. Or like a messaging hub. Or a source of content consumption. So, well, that's still a library. His eyes flicked as he stared at me with a blank smile. Consumption. You can eat it? Yeah, he has no clue what I'm talking about. How do I explain to him the very concept of Web 2.0? I cleared my throat, deciding that I simply won't. Maybe I can show you what I mean someday. His eyes brightened, seeming to like that idea a lot. You mean that? I do. I mean, honestly, I wish that there was a route where we could actually adopt Mychael. Like, yes, I love him. I love our tall mushroom boy, but I want to adopt him too. Like, yes, I would like to straddle you and make you see stars for days on end, but I also want to, like, bring you home and feed you and, like, pet you. Like, God, I don't know how to feel about that. Is that wrong? I can have some? Yeah. I think it's about time you start getting a little more modern around here. No offense. Imagine what you could do with a generator. His smile widened, just a tad, so there's still a cluelessness on his face that was just a little endearing. Generator. I laughed and reached across to pat his hand, a gesture that made his smile wobble. Like I said, I'll show you someday. A loud thwack sounded against the floorboards, followed by a rhythmic thudding. Leaning over, I could see the tip of his tail was wagging back and forth, the tip of it slapping against the floor almost comically. Mychael looked flustered as he laughed softly, lifting his hand back to rub his neck. Sorry. He looked like he had more to say, but exhaled heavily, gathering himself before tilting his chin towards my empty bowl. Are you done? I nodded as he stood and collected our dirty dishes, heading towards the sink to wash them. I followed close behind, carrying the mugs. We made quick work of the dishes, heading back to the living room to relax. Mychael headed to his basket of knitting materials, his movements routine. I wasn't sure what to do with myself. Now that food was no longer a distraction, I felt uneasy again, glancing around the room and staring at the window. Mychael was eyeing me as he grabbed the stool and dragged it to the center of the room. Is there something outside? His question sounded innocent, but it had a sense of wariness to it. I shook my head quickly. Nothing. I was just... Something catches my eye from under the bed, glinting like a knife. Tilting my head lower, I could see it was a tin container the size of a shoebox. What's that? Mychael looked up. Huh? Under your bed. A panicked look came across his face. That thing? Just some emergency supplies. Yeah, nothing too special. I had an inkling that he was being dishonest again, but I figured I'd leave it for another day. I see. Mychael watched me for a moment or two before clearing his throat. Hey, Firefly? Huh? I've been meaning to ask. Do you remember what you said? At the river? The river? Oh, where I tripped. I pursed my lip in thought. Not really. Everything feels fuzzy to me. He seemed disappointed. Oh, not even a little? I shook my head. Why? Did I say something stupid? Just some things. It made me happy. Oh God, I think I did say something stupid. Before I could ask about it, he'd already gestured towards the bed. Well, you should get some sleep, Firefly. Want to wake up nice and early to find my sanity, right? The idea of looking for my cat once more made me wilt. You really think we'd find her? Mychael looked on edge, pocketing his hands. Does it hurt to try? But it does hurt to hope. His face twitched. Well, His ears flattened as he thought of something to say, clearly struggling. He finally opened his mouth to respond, his words slow and careful. I'm here for you. Thank you, Mychael. He nodded, a strange mixture of polite happiness and hidden anxiety playing across his face. He's probably not used to another person sticking around this long, let alone someone going through a loss he could care less about. Maybe I've been enough of a burden to him. Actually, can you just send me home? His brows raised, his posture straightening in surprise. Are you sure? But what about my sanity? Don't you want to see if we can find her? I'm sure. A look of apprehension crossed his face. But it's so soon. My sanity could be out there. Mychael, please. I can't think about her right now. I just want to go home. He fidgeted with the sleeves of his cardigan. But He looked like he had so much more to say, but whatever turmoil going on in his head was quickly swept behind a reassuring smile. Okay. Get some sleep, Firefly. You've been through a lot. He went to collect his blankets again, already arranging them into a nest like the night before. The words left my mouth before I could think twice. I could trust you, right? A flicker of surprise crossed Mychael's face. Of course you can trust me. He didn't say anything else, as if that one line should be enough to convince me. And honestly, it was too late to start an interrogation that was only going to end up in me feeling guilty for upsetting him. I got under the covers, facing the wall with my back turned towards him. I could hear him setting up his nest behind me, before finally quieting down with a satisfied hum. I closed my eyes. Technically, this would be day 4 at this point, right? Unless it's still day 3. The last thing I heard was the gentle crackling of the fireplace, accompanied by Mychael's knitting needles clicking away in the dark. Before I knew it, I could hear the birds chirping outside the window. The first thing I noticed was the fire must have been out, considering I couldn't hear the familiar pop and snap that came with the room's ambience. The second thing I realized was the hand gently shaking my shoulder awake. Wake up, sleepyhead. I stirred, yawning as I sat up in bed. Mychael beamed, hand still on my shoulder. There you are. Had a good sleep? I mumbled incoherently. His smile widened into a grin as I blinked myself out of a woozy state. If I didn't know any better, he seemed to enjoy waking me up in the morning just to see my disgruntled expressions. Breakfast is ready. Wash up and meet me in the kitchen, alright? Just give me a second. He took that as my assent, humming in response. Suddenly his hand reached up to ruffle my hair, messing up my bedhead further. Hey! He merely laughed at my indignant squawk before reminding me once more to get up, his steps already thudding towards the kitchen. Recovering after a moment, I stared at the wall and pondered my situation for a second as I made my way to the bathroom. This was the third day since I left my house. I'm missing work, missing my cat, and missing my sense of direction. I gotta get back to my life. Today. Quietly reminding myself of my goal, I padded to the bathroom, freshened up, and joined him in the kitchen. Mychael was already seated, cutting into some pancakes. His smile was bright as I entered the kitchen, his tail flicking closer to my seat as I sat down. A similar stack of mouth-watering pancakes was placed across him, waiting for me to dig in. So I couldn't bring myself to muster up an appetite with so many thoughts filling up my head. He seemed to notice the look on my face, laughing nervously. You look serious. Something on your mind, Firefly? I picked up my fork, twiddling with it. I'm just worried about getting home. Mychael faltered as he lifted a piece to his mouth. Oh, you're still thinking about that? He seemed annoyed. Which was the first? Of course. I mean, I've been gone for 3 days. People probably think I've gone missing. His gaze lowered, almost grumbling. Is that so bad? What? Yeah, it's bad. Why do you sound like you don't even care? Mychael frowned, looking up at me now. Why do you sound like you're so desperate to leave? What? It's all you ever think about. Are you not happy being here? Is it not enough? I sighed, rubbing my fingers over my eyes. Mychael, we've gone over this. I've said it once and I'll say it again. You've done so much for me already. But I can't keep pretending everything's okay here. I want to go home. I need to go home. He sucked in a deep breath, grunting something indecipherable under his breath. I only wanted to. He seemed to be battling himself before he finally sighed. I'm sorry. You're right. Of course you're right. His tone seemed genuine, even if the hurt in his eyes was clear as day. I'll send you back today. I narrowed my eyes. I meant it this time, I promise. He held his hand over his chest. I swear on my heart. I trust him. I mean, how could I not trust him? He was my last hope. Okay. I paused for a moment before adding quickly. Thank you. He nodded and went back to eating, watching me expectantly as he took a timid bite. It was a moment before he swallowed and spoke again. Can you promise me something? His voice was quiet, and for a lack of a better word, vulnerable. What is it? Promise me. His mouth hung open for a second or two before he laughed. Promise me you weren't lying when you said you liked my cooking. I snorted. Are you kidding? Do I look like the kind of person to lie? I'm offended, Mychael. He laughed again, light and airy. But if I dared to look closer, I could tell it was fake. He probably didn't want to make our last moments tense and awkward. The least I could do was meet him halfway. Before long, we found ourselves walking down another path from Mychael's. The route was different today, probably because he didn't have any detours in mind. We walked in silence for a while. The only thing accompanying us were the sounds of nature and our footsteps. I couldn't tell what Mychael was thinking. I knew he wasn't the talkative type unless spoken to, but right now, he seemed eerily quiet. His back was tense, eyes looking nowhere but forward. My voice was itching to say something, anything. But it felt like the both of us had some thoughts to digest, despite it being easier to say it out loud. Still, the silence was getting unbearable. So, we both halted in our steps at the sound of rustling, Mychael's ear perking in a direction. What was that? His hands were already raising to hold his crossbow, deftly cocking it with an experienced pull of the string until a solid click was heard. Stay quiet. Stay close. I swallowed, my heart picking up speed. He started walking low towards the source of the sound, his boots barely making a sound compared to my clumsy footsteps. The rustling continued, sounding like a scuffle was occurring between the bushes. Closer, closer, until my ears picked up an unfamiliar, high-pitched sound. It sounded like a tiny infant screaming. As morbid as that was, Mychael actually relaxed as he recognized it. His steps hastened silently towards the source, crossbow lowering until we came across what exactly it was that caused the disturbance. A rabbit! Its small, delicate foot snagged in an old, rusted trap. Its little body trembled as it breathed fast and shallow, no doubt scared out of its mind. Mychael regarded it empathically before unloading his crossbow, disturbed by the caught rabbit, but at the same time, relieved at the absence of a threat. Just a rabbit. Sweeping his crossbow behind his back and out of sight, he looked at it for another moment before looking towards me. Let's keep going then. My mouth dropped in shock. And leave that poor thing behind? He raised a brow, confused at my bewilderment. Yeah? But it's going to die! His face twisted into confusion. That's generally what happens to prey animals, yeah. He was so nonchalant about it, I had to keep my emotions in check. We can't do that! Look at it! His expression was understanding, if a little annoyed. I am. Someone left a trap. The rabbit gets caught in it. That's how it works. What do you want me to do? Set it free? Obviously? He was frowning now. I can't. If someone is nearby, they'll be suspicious how their catch got free. Does that matter? Animals escape traps all the time. The poor thing is suffering. Lion, I know you're smarter than this. If it doesn't die today, it'll die tomorrow. To a trap, to a fox, to a hunter. It probably won't even survive long with its injured foot if we set it free. You're prolonging the inevitable. Can't you put it out of its misery then? He hesitated. Do you really want me to do that? No. But even then, we don't even know if anyone's coming back for it. The thing looks so old. He sighed impatiently, looking stubborn in his decision. That's the point of a trap. It's to keep things right where they are until you come back. The way he said it just rubbed me in the wrong way. Why, I don't know. Why? Oh, why is this now a decision? Oh, God. On one hand, yeah, realistic. At the same time, the rabbit. He's being, oh God, he's being realistic. He's being realistic. Yeah, that's gonna be someone's dinner. Yeah. In a way, his logic made sense, but still, I could hardly believe how needlessly callous he was being. For someone so sweet with hens, he was so indifferent about the poor rabbit shaking at our feet. I looked down at it once more, my heart breaking as it started to squeak. Mychael. Please? My heart was torn as the rabbit helplessly kicked its feet, its cries weakening. For a moment I imagined my sanity being caught in a trap just like this one, left to starve and die when someone could have been there to help her. No. We can't leave it like this. Please, Mychael? His harsh gaze started to soften at my plea. Does it matter that much to you, Firefly? I nodded quickly without hesitation. Please? It'll be the last time I'll ever ask you for anything. He paused for another moment before shaking his head with a defeated sigh. Somehow I doubt it's gonna be the last time. There was a smile in his voice, though. All right. I'll do it for you. Stand back. I have to pry it open. My gratitude was clear on my face as he pulled out a deadly-looking hunting knife from his pocket, kneeling down next to the rabbit. The terrified creature started to writhe all over again at the sight of a looming threat, Mychael grunting as he held it down firmly with one hand. It started to fall still under his hold, relaxing completely with its foot hanging limp. Huh. He sure had a way of animals. I backed away to give him space, not wanting to distract him. As he was working to free the rabbit, I looked around to take in my surroundings. The trees felt somewhat familiar, a flash of memory playing in my mind. Casting one last glance towards Mychael's back, I wandered a bit further away, making sure to stay within earshot. It took a few steps before I come across a familiar sight. Oh! It was the circle of mushrooms from the other day. This was a trap. I recalled that my sanity was definitely here. I hesitated at the edge of it, a sourceless sense of fear suddenly coursing through me as I stared at it. Had it grown bigger? The longer I stood there, the more my fear dissipated, my limbs tingling pleasantly and urging me forward. Before I realized it, my foot was already lifting to approach it. Closer. Closer. Staring at it, a fuzzy haze creeped over my mind. My face was warm. I found myself smiling at the oddly comforting familiarity, like recalling a fond memory, like greeting an old friend. I knelt down to inspect the growth, reaching out to brush my hand on one of the mushroom caps, when someone yanked my wrist back. What? Don't! Huh? Don't touch those! I looked up to see Mychael looming over me, gaze sharp and irises shaped like thin slivers. You have a terrible habit of wandering off, don't you? I gulped. I just... How is the rabbit? Is it safe? His eyes narrowed as I flailed to change the subject. It's free, like you asked. Don't touch those. Mychael squeezed my wrist before letting go. I rubbed my wrist. It didn't hurt, but his grip had intent. Why? What's wrong with them? Nothing. Could you tell me about those? Because that's clearly a threat. Okay? I know you'd be outing yourself at that point. Like, I already know that this has some, like, psychoactive effect or something. But you should tell me what the threat is. Just don't touch them. I just thought it looked pretty. That's all. Did you, though? I shook my head, feeling disoriented as my mind flickered between thoughts rapidly like a broken radio station. Mychael snapped his fingers for my attention. Look at me, Firefly. His voice was snippy and irritated. I blinked rapidly to ground myself, scratching my head as I tried to gather my thoughts. Talk to me. Say anything. Some people think they're magic. Yeah, that's a pretty common belief with mushroom rings, isn't it? I hung onto that thought. Keep going. Like, related to fae folk, you know? It's why they're called fairy rings or, a fairy circle. Mychael squinted before easing, his demeanor just a little less tense compared to before. They do look like they could summon a portal at any moment and whisk you away. I looked over at Mychael, expecting him to look amused. Instead, he was glaring down at the ground, as if the mushrooms were the most vile thing he'd ever seen. No, it's more of an invasive species than anything else. I followed his gaze towards the harmless circle of fungus. They're not harmless! They are? Should we do something about it? He blinked as if coming out of a daze. No. Sorry, just a thought slipped out. He pinched his nose bridge, his normally soft voice a tired grumble. Normally I'd leave them alone to do their business, but having you here... Anyway, just don't touch it, okay? I was being far too uptight about something as trivial as a circle of mushrooms. Am I really that dense? I guess I am. Feels like there's more to it than that. His sigh was exasperated. They just grew in my part of the forest. That's all. They make me uncomfortable. It definitely felt like Mychael wanted to use a stronger word than uncomfortable, a barely concealed growl between his teeth. Why? I thought you liked mushrooms. Mychael's ears flattened. Not these ones. They're not even real mushrooms. They're not? No. He seemed to hesitate before blurting. They just happen to mimic mushrooms. Oh. I've never heard of something like that. So there are some pretty wild foliage out there that could copy the look of nearby plants. Does it have a name? His brows scrunched in confusion. What? Them? Yeah. You know, as in the species? Oh. I'm not entirely sure. I can recognize them by sight, though, so just stick with me when we're out in the woods, okay? I really don't want you anywhere near them. Alright, if you say so. I just don't get how they can be invasive, that's all. I consider it invasive when they come to my property. Is he really getting this angry over cute mushrooms? I'm gonna be honest, you're acting really weird about it, Mychael. He was getting more agitated the longer we stood there, hands clenching into tighter fists. Lion, I know I ask a lot from you, but please, let's just leave them alone, okay? Why? Look! Can't we just... I flinched, back away from him as his voice rang through the trees. The silence passed between us before he took a deep breath. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Please, can we step away from here? He held out his hand. His fingers were trembling. I'll take his hand. I closed my hand around his, noting the way his tail flicked so hard it thumped against his leg. His fingers were calloused against my own, twitching at the unfamiliar sensation. I stepped up beside him, looked at him expectantly. I didn't think you'd take it. Now it was my turn to get flustered. You offered? I know I did! I thought I scared you, so I figured... We waited for the other to say something, our faces growing heated as seconds passed. He finally laughed, exclaiming something strange and gobbled before squeezing my hand. Lion, you're really something special. I hope you realize that. He gave my hand another tight squeeze, snapping me out of my daydream. Let's get you home, Firefly. Mychael took the lead, footing sure and confident. He must have noticed my unsteady gait beside him, as he suddenly veered towards a clearer path I could easily follow. I didn't verbalize it, but I was definitely grateful for that. As much as the forest was growing on me, getting my feet caught in roots and twigs every few steps gets tiring after a while. Our steps fall into rhythm next to each other. I peeked at Mychael every once in a while, trying to gauge his mood after what happened. Even after spending so much time with him, he was so difficult to read. How could someone both wear their heart on their sleeve, yet keep it stitched tight, never letting anyone come too close? I knew he had secrets he wanted to keep close to his chest, but I wished he'd just open up to me a little. The silence that hung in the air was making my skin prickle. What's your favorite animal? I was so caught up in my thoughts I didn't even realize that I blurted the first thing that came to mind. Mychael regarded me curiously, ear flicking. My favorite animal? He pursed his lips in thought before his ears perked. Jellyfish! I did a double take. It was one thing for him to have answered so readily, but the choice was something else. Jelly... Why jellyfish? I thought it'd be, I don't know, a bird or something? He shrugged. They're pretty to look at least from the pictures I've seen. Plus, I kinda relate to them. He said that without zero hesitation. How exactly do you relate to a jellyfish? No thoughts, head empty, is that it? I mean, you kinda see it that way. His expression faltered, as if deciding on the right way he could explain this answer. Let's just say I have something in common. With a jellyfish? Well, one jellyfish. In what way? That they're pretty to look at? A strangled noise slipped past his throat. No? You wouldn't get it. Try me. No. I groaned like a dying whale in exasperation, shoulders slumped like I had a back problem. He's not gonna elaborate anymore, is he? He probably spotted the vein growing on my forehead as he snickered. Relax, Firefly. You're gonna faint on the spot if you think any harder. If you're allowed to get upset about mushrooms, I'm allowed to get upset about jellyfish. His smile dropped for a second before his cheeky grin returned. Touché. Wait, touch? Touch what? You know, touch. I stared at him. His happy grin shifted into a confused frown. You know, touch when, it's like saying you're right. You mean touché? He smiled innocently. Yeah. This man will be the death of me. He laughed at my screwed up grimace, waving a hand hastily. What about you? What's your favorite animal? Cats, your chicken with my favorite animal. I have no idea why aren't there more choices. And I guess, do I really want to say cats? But chickens, though. Chickens are so fascinating. Ooh. Yeah, I'm gonna go with chickens. Like, descendants of dinosaurs and all that jazz. He looked taken aback, clearly not expecting that answer. Really? Yeah. Who wouldn't fall in love with those little darlings? He seemed pleased with that answer, his hearty white smile softening further. You're right. Who wouldn't fall in love with a little darling? We continued with idle chatter after that. I didn't even know how much time had passed as the trees slowly thinned out, the sounds of nature muffling as the canopy started to grow scarce. Suddenly, I heard the soft, yet familiar rumble of a car in the distance. I almost didn't pick up on it, fully immersed in whatever Mychael was rambling on about. Something about the life cycle of a topsy-turvy Dorney or whatever it was he called. Oh! Have we really walked that far already? I left Mychael's side and rushed forward. He made a sound of surprise, but followed suit. I neared the edge of the forest just as another car drove past. I recognized my street instantly. Breaking into a light jog, I almost missed Mychael calling for my name as I run down the road. There! A house was visible from where I stood by the street. I was breathing heavily by the time Mychael approached my side, the man barely making a sound as I took in the sight. Oh, I missed this. I turned to thank Mychael, only to startle when a bundled stranger took his place. Ah! Sorry. People about. I couldn't see anyone around, but I guess he was right to be safe. I guess this was his version of a disguise. If I were to pass him on the street, I don't think I would have bothered to look twice. I mean, I want to say thank you to your face, but I'll settle for this, I guess. His chuckle was muffled underneath the scarf. He pulled it down so he could speak properly. Did I scare you? I got distracted. Mychael's eyes squinted from where I could see them. No wonder how you don't get lost every 20 steps. Hey! He laughed at my offended tone. Better not go back in there, got it? I'm not always gonna be around to find you. Who says I need you around to find me? Almost instantly, his eyes hardened under his sunglasses. I'm serious. Don't go wandering in these woods again. Or I might have to start taking drastic measures just to make sure you stay put right where you are. I sputtered indignantly. I'll wander where I please. Sure. He looked over my shoulders towards my house. So that's where you live, huh? Looks cozy. I wasn't sure if it was being genuine considering he lived in the wooden back ends of the middle of nowhere. Suddenly I perked up with a thought. Do you want to come by? His eyes darted towards me, shock evident on his face. Me? To your home? I nodded. He froze completely. For a second I thought he stopped breathing. I'd love to... Sudden barking and a shout startled us both, my body jerking forward as his arm yanked me close. I heard a soft rustle as his sunglasses fell to the grass from the sudden motion, his hastily worn beanie shaken off his head. Looking up, it was just my neighbor calling out to her dog. Oh! Looks like Vita's back from college. I paused, feeling his grip tighten. I looked down at his hand on my shoulder before glancing up at him. Mychael? He snapped back to the present, his hand releasing me quickly. Sorry. He looked towards my neighbor and their dog for another moment before turning back to me. I don't think it's a good idea for me to go with you. I don't want to be seen. I deflated just a little. But you have your disguise, don't you? He shook his head insistently. I can't risk it. It's better this way. He spoke with a finality that was starting to become familiar. If he wasn't willing, fine. At least I was. Before he could pick up his accessories, I gently grabbed his wrist. Then, can I come visit you instead? What? I huffed impatiently. If you won't come to mine, then I'll go to yours. Once again, he was rendered speechless. Why would you ever want to see me again? At this point, I was starting to look and sound peeved. For all his good traits, the constant need to build his walls higher around me was starting to get annoying. I folded my arms, looking stern. His eyes widened as if in preparation, ears flattening like a cat in the middle of a scolding. Mychael, can you just accept the fact that maybe I enjoy your company and wouldn't mind more? I'm sorry, nobody's ever... But you wanted to go home so badly. Oh, this man is hopeless! Yes, of course I do! That doesn't mean I'm gonna forget about you completely. Besides, I promised I'd show you what phones do, didn't I? Dismissing the fact that there's probably not much I can show when there's no data in the woods. I'm sure he'd be enthralled by whatever dinky mobile game I had installed at the time. The point was, I just wanted to see him again. So that means... I get to see you again? I picked up on the eager tone in his voice, realizing he wished for the same sentiment. Yeah, I want to. His voice warbled for a second. Firefly. He cleared his throat, laughing to himself. Lion, you can't imagine how much that means to me. A lot. It means a lot. More than you know. I nodded, a giddy smile creeping onto my own face. How's next weekend? He tilted his head. That's 7 sundowns from now? 5. His smile widened, eyes squinting in absolute delight. Okay. I'll meet you here then. I smiled at him, figuring this was goodbye. I hugged him. I didn't think twice, arms spread and wrapped around him before he could react. Mychael froze from head to toe, inhaling sharply as his shoulders tensed. For a second, I thought I triggered a fight or flight or freeze response. It took a few seconds before he shifted to reciprocate, lightly placing his hands on the small of my back in a loose hold, fingertips splayed awkwardly along my spine. He seemed to gain confidence as he wrapped his arms around me properly, a shaky sigh leaving his body as he relaxed. A faint, rhythmic rumble emitted from his chest, my eyes widening at the strange feeling. Was he purring? I knew I'd heard that sound before, but he was definitely purring. I didn't have time to dwell on it for long. His grip was getting tighter. 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 I was about to sputter out when another car passing by made him jump and release me. I had to step away to catch my breath after the squeeze. His arms dropped to the side with a blank stare in my direction. Oh! Out of the corner of my eyes, I could see his hands clenching tightly, as if holding himself back. I looked up at him, expecting him to say something first. Instead, he just stared at me, like I grew a third eye. I quickly cleared my throat, cheeks starting to burn. Anyways, I gave him one last light punch to the shoulder. It felt like punching a sack of grains. I'll see you next weekend. Ignoring the heat on my face, I looked both ways before jogging across the street. My neighbor in their yard looked up as I approached, their eyes lighting up in recognition. Lion? Their hands fidgeted with the frisbee in their hand as they approached their ever-loyal Leica following close behind. I was wondering where you've been. I dropped by to give you some cake over the weekend, but you weren't home, and you didn't answer your phone, and your packages were piling up at the door, and... I held up my hand in a placating gesture. Vida, I'm fine. At our feet, Leica was dutifully pawing at their elbow to calm them down. Their mouths stopped midway through another sentence, blinking rapidly. Sorry. They reached out to pat Laika's head, significantly calmer as they asked me again. Where were you? Where have you been? I was, visiting a friend. For a digital detox? Off the grid and all that. They blinked slowly, nodding. Oh, that sounds exciting. At the tone of their voice, they didn't mean that at all. Oh, what about my sanity? Did you manage to find her? My mood instantly dropped. No. It's why I went in the first place, you could say. It took a few seconds for Vita to understand what I meant. Oh, I'm sorry. It's fine. They straightened, a flash of empathy on their face before they smiled. Well, Laika and I are around for the semester break if you need anything. We should do a movie night. Maybe that'll lift your spirits. I found this really good one that I think you'd like. I did some research and I feel it's right up your alley. Laika and I could take a quick drive to the store, just let us know when you're up for it. I could get you your favorite snacks and stuff. Laika gave a happy bark at the familiar word. A fond smile quirked at my lips. Thank you, Vita. I'll bring the orange soda. The expression lit up happily. Take care. I bid them both goodbye to walk up to my driveway. Once I got to my door, I had the urge to turn around one last time. I was surprised to see Mychael still standing by the forest edge, shadowed by the trees. That is definitely not stalker behavior. I don't know what y'all are talking about. Our eyes made contact, his own a fierce, piercing yellow shining against the shade. I gave him a big wave. It took a moment, but he waved back. Smiling to myself, I unlocked the front door and let myself inside. It was surreal standing by my doorway again. I felt like Alice, who just woke up at the end of the book, feeling like I dream of Wonderland. I tossed my keys in my backpack by the hall carelessly before plugging my phone into the charger. I dreaded playing catch-up with the people who might have tried to reach me during my absence. Work, family, friends. I groaned aloud, flopping onto the living room couch. Oh well, at least I had this weekend to look forward to. That's all for day 3 of Mushroom Oasis. Sweet! Now, there is something I'm a bit curious about. What happens if I said that I was probably just being paranoid? I'm wondering, like, whether this would be a better route than, like, what I went down. So, I was probably just being paranoid. Then again, it's been a while since I showered, so I could chalk it up to dirt accumulating on me and making me itch in places I didn't want to think about. After undressing, I folded my clothes so I could place them in my backpack later before turning on the shower. The water was ice cold! My teeth chattered as I cleaned myself as fast as I could, using some scentless soap by the side of the tub. Dressing myself again, I wrung out my hair as best as I could before drying it with a towel. Putting on the clothes Mychael provided, I felt like I had shrunk in sizes. I adjusted the sleeves and waistband to my liking with some struggling, just so my hands and feet could poke out of the holes comfortably. I couldn't help noticing his clothes smelled like freshly cut grass with a smoky hint of a woodsy bonfire. The scent reminded me of camping in summer. Persistent doubt aside, I definitely felt way better compared to when I woke up. Stepping out, I could smell something good coming from the kitchen. A gentle humming greeted me as I came through the doorway. Mychael was idly stirring a pot by the stove, looking up at me as I entered the kitchen. Whatever he had in that pot made my stomach grumble yet again. His ears flickered as he registered the clothes I was wearing. How do they fit? I shrugged. They're definitely bigger on me. He nodded, turning back to the pot. I can see that. I wasn't sure what you normally wear, so I went with whatever I had that was, He struggled to pick a word. Coziest? I gave a hum of agreement, fiddling with the hem of his sweater. I'm gonna flirt. Was I really about to do this? I guess I was. With the confidence of a courting peacock with nothing to lose, I leaned against the doorway, making sure to prop my hip in just the right angle against the edge. I think I look good in your clothes. Maybe I should wear them more often. With how baggy the clothes were on me, I probably look closer to a sentient sack of potatoes than a human being. Mychael must have sensed something different with my tone as he gave a confused chuckle, with his tail noticeably swishing side to side. I guess you could. I'm pretty sure most of them won't fit right. Undeterred, I continued on. I could help find something more comfortable. I sent the smoothest wink I could master. Wink? Nailed it. He seemed to consider my offer. Thought I found the right outfit, but you can look through the closet for something you like now that you're awake. You have something in your eye? I straightened suddenly. I'm just trying something, I guess. Trying what? Never mind. What's cooking, good looking? Against all odds, his cheeks actually began to color, his hand stirring the pot, faltering for a brief second. Okay, like, I'm starting to think like this should have been my choice. I'm starting to think that this should have been my choice for, like, day 3. God damn it, he's so cute. What? Wait, this might actually work. I bolstered my efforts, leaning forward with another smile. You heard me. You said... He hesitated to repeat it. Well, maybe you should get your eyes checked. This was a terrible idea! I cleared my throat awkwardly. Thank you for the clothes. He must have said something wrong again as he quickly tried to salvage whatever the hell was going on. For what it's worth, you look very... What does that... How? Whatever it was he said, it sounded like several strange clicks of the tongue. But with vowels? Somehow? What? He huffed, tail waving side to side like a metronome. It means... He trailed off. I guess in your language it would mean, cute? My smile faltered as he fidgeted. We stared at each other. I might actually have a chance! The color on his face was closer to a blueberry the longer I looked at him. There was an awkward tension before I broke it with a nervous laugh. Cute? In fact, I could swear I heard him whimper in panic. The situation was so absurd, I had to laugh harder. Was that so hard to say? He sputtered. I didn't think you'd be comfortable with me saying it. Why not? Well, you know. What do I know? My grin was teasing, and he picked up on that quickly, his nervousness dissipating as he gave a sharp huff. His hand stirred the pot faster. So, I called you cute. It's not a big deal. Then why is your face so blue like it is? He made another choking noise, eyes darting about. It's just the heat from the stove. I'm cooking my best here. I snickered at his terrible excuse. You're a bad liar. But it's true. Stovetops don't do that. Mine does. A glaring contest ensued before we both ended up bursting into a fit of giggles, my face warming from the silly banter. The kitchen started whistling, then cutting a moment short. He seemed disappointed by the shift in the atmosphere, but quickly moved to pick it up. Why don't we take a seat, Firefly? I'll be right with you. He was already turning his back towards me to start preparing the tea. I slowly approached him. Hey, and I just realized that all this is more or less the same, so we're gonna skip ahead to see if there's anything different. I looked over at Mychael as he pulled out the stool from the corner of the room towards the front of the fireplace. His ears flicked in my direction before he returned my glance. Do you knit? Not at all. He gave a soft chuckle. Maybe you'll like it if you tried. Can I see what you're working on? He looked surprised, not expecting my interest. Sure, it's just something to work on in my downtime. Halfway through, I started to realize that maybe it's not really my color. He lifted it up for me to see, only for my foot to kick the basket and send the ball of yarn rolling towards the bed. Sorry. I quickly followed it, only to halt as I spotted something under the bed. It was glinting off the bright firelight within the room. Approaching the bed and tilting my head lower, I could see it was a tin container the size of a shoebox. What's that? Mychael looked up. Huh? Under your bed. Is it something important? A hesitant look came across his face. Oh, just some emergency supplies. Nothing too special. I had an inkling it was something more, but I figured I'd let him keep his privacy without prying anymore. I see. Mychael watched me for a moment or two before clearing his throat. Hey, Firefly? Huh? I've been meaning to ask. Oh, so I think all this is more or less the same, so skipping right along again. Do you want to use the bed tonight? He stopped in his tracks. Oh, no, I don't mind the floor. I meant we'd be sharing the bed. Hearing it out loud just made me want to slap myself across the face. Mychael blinked at me before laughing lightly. My bed's too small for 2 people, don't you think? I don't think it'd be comfortable for either of us. He eyed the bed frame before looking back at me. I'll be alright. With that, he crouched on the floor and started setting up his bed, his tail swaying languidly. I lay down and faced the wall, the sharp sting of embarrassment in my chest refusing to go away. Why did I ask that? Well, clearly you know why you asked that. That was so stupid. No, it's not. Maybe I needed a sense of comfort. Maybe I just needed him. Maybe it's both. Whichever it was, at least he took it at face value. I wasn't sure what I'd even do if he said yes. I groaned internally and shut my eyes, willing myself to go to sleep. I'd probably take a bite out of him. I would, wonder if he actually tasted like a mushroom. Would he be meaty? Would he be earthy? I'm a little curious. Alright, let's skip right along. I trust him. We've already seen all this. He's being realistic. Please let the buddy go. He's slapping my hand away. I take his hand. But does this change anything? I'm curious. I don't know if this changes anything. I hug him, and it changes nothing! It changes nothing! Anyway, that was Mushroom Oasis. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys do want to play this game for yourselves, link to the game will be in the description below. And just for a bit of a reference, as we're going into day 4, once it eventually releases, I will likely go down the route which I initially took, where I was slightly distrustful of Mychael, where I think that he's hiding something. I think that will make the playthrough a little more interesting, and I think we can still romance him, hopefully. Otherwise, I'm just gonna be screwed for the rest of my playthrough. I have no idea where this is going. I have no idea. I just wanted to see what, calling myself paranoid would, do. What would gaslighting myself do? But anyway, thank you all so much for watching. Hope you all have a lovely rest of the day. And, as always, I'll be seeing you in the next video. This is Lion, signing off. Ciao.